This is Pearls on Tuesday, and what I'm going to share on my vlog today is a little glimpse of my home in southeastern Virginia, inside and out for spring 2023. We're coming down the patio steps in the backyard now, and there's a little seating area there. But what I am very proud of are my beautiful amaryllis. This is the second season that they are reblooming out here. I was given those for Christmas. They bloomed beautifully during that season. I planted the bulbs in a pot, and they seem to be doing great. Nice, big, vibrant blooms. Here is a little nostalgic nod to my grandparents. That little metal sign was on the top of their mailbox in the house where we grew up and had so many wonderful holidays. One of my favorite things on my deck is this little table that sits between these Adirondack chairs. My father built that for me. My dad also built this bench trellis. He designed it and built it. I planted 2 pots of this gorgeous wisteria in it, hoping that it would take and begin to wind itself up the sides and over the top, and it certainly has not disappointed. This birdhouse that you see in the back has a little clutch of baby bluebirds in it right now. Last summer, they raised 2 clutches in that birdhouse, and they've started again this spring. Here is a clematis vine that I have growing around this trellis. I just wind the pieces in, and planted underneath the clematis are some iris. They're not in bloom yet. They came from my nanny's yard when we sold her house. Here is some yellow yarrow getting ready to bloom, and a view of the other end of our patio, which is a little eating area. You will see the 3 there on the side of the raised planter. 3 is an auspicious number for our family, and we kind of collect numeral 3s. It's my rosemary topiary. This end of the raised planter is my little herb garden. I love to come out when I'm cooking and cut fresh herbs. And this St. Francis statue sat in my nanny's yard for many, many years. I have it now. I've planted some spring flowers around it, and a few of my topiaries. I believe they all made it over the winter. I created this topiary, the circular one, with nothing more than a coat hanger that I bent into the shape and began to wind the ivy around it. But I really enjoy that. Here is some lavender phlox blooming in the bottom, And going up the trellis, some rows of Sharon that I took a little sprout from a friend's garden, and it seems to be happy living there. But I'm most thrilled about the potential for these peony blooms. I transplanted some of my peony plant from the side garden last year into this pot, hoping that it would make it and bloom, and I believe in the near future I'm going to have some beautiful pink peonies. The rocks along the edge of the patio here, I have some rose bushes planted in there, but I threw little bits and pieces of succulent plants from various containers when I would find them on the floor or on the tables and chairs as the wind blew, and they have really taken root. And that really helps with weed control besides being pretty. Really beautiful, full asta blooming there, and another little topiary that I started. Needs to be trimmed a little bit because that's a heart at the top, but it's beginning to look like a ball. Have some coral bells blooming, and my hellebore or Lenten rose. I love the muted dusky colors of that plant. This is a little moss garden I started several years ago. I propagated moss from various places I'd visit, including Central Park, where my children live in New York, and it has really taken off, is beginning to spread itself over these rocks. And then I have a vintage metal trellis in the middle with some vinca and ivy growing in it. There's a solar light inside. It really looks pretty at night. There's a statue of Mary that greets you at the entrance to my garden. I bought that visiting the Williamsburg Pottery with my nanny many, many years ago. A little view of our backyard. Trying to get some ivy to grow there. I don't know how that's going to do. These are Asian lilies that are coming back again this year. No blooms yet, but they're on their way. And some oyster shells that we collected over the years on the beach. This is the back door that goes into the house. And in just a minute, we've arrived in the front of the house. I have a floral arrangement on the front door, and the porch is flanked with two vintage planters that also have some greenery in it. I apologize for the sounds of the traffic in the background. We do live on a main thoroughfare in our suburban neighborhood. This is a little glimpse of some of my amaryllis that were put in the ground to bloom And the side yard, there's a crepe myrtle that's not quite blooming yet. My little concrete bunny was down there by the steps. And now we're heading toward the side yard where I put in a little country garden, a little stepping stone garden along the side of our fairly long driveway. Right at the edge here are some light lilac bearded iris that I transplanted from my nanny's yard, and a nandina that's growing up with a little concrete ornament there. These iris bloom every year, and I remember them being on the side of my grandmother's house. There's some blue juniper down there on the ground. A lot of this ground cover has self-seeded. The violets that you're seeing, a lot of the sedum and creeping thyme. In the spring and summer, it comes out very nicely, and I just pull out what becomes too intrusive. But again, it helps with weed control. I'm waiting for my fairly young hydrangeas to bloom again this year. And you can see that pretty pink rose bush my husband gave me for Mother's Day a few years ago. And some lamb's ear down here by the Celtic cross. And in that pot, I have some dahlias that I'm hoping will continue to bloom out this summer. Along the fence, we have some wisteria that has sprouted out but hasn't bloomed yet. Over the years, we wove it into the fence, and when it's in full bloom, it is really, really beautiful. A little evergreen topiary and an azalea in the background. You can see a lot of that ground cover coming out. I have some pieces of flagstone interspersed in this little side garden to serve as stepping stones. This ligustrum I'm kind of training as a topiary. It's coming along. My white azalea. And this hybrid hydrangea really is a beautiful bush. I pruned it back last season. It's coming back beautifully. And this little yew I rescued, it was looking really pitiful. I transplanted it, and it looks like it's getting some nice growth. We have a vacant lot beside our house. Kind of serves as a little forest next door, which is very pretty. And this part of the driveway would lead us into the backyard. This little blue spruce was given to me by my parents. It was almost dead and very malformed, and I kind of pruned it into a topiary shape, and it too is putting off lots of new growth. I wanted to show you this brick wall that is in layers, different levels. There is ivy and vinca planted on that slope, which helped to stabilize that soil. The tree that is there is a hybrid magnolia, which really smells delicious in the summertime. But I have to give a shout out to my hubs, who does such a wonderful job keeping the lawn not just cut, but trimmed and maintained, and all the bushes shaped. I do all the container gardening, but he takes care of the big stuff. This little sidewalk that comes into my front yard, I have 2 little topiaries I started there. And so now we will ascend the steps, and I will invite you inside for a peek at some spring decor. When I take down Easter, I do leave up some things that will serve us until summertime. Here in the entrance foyer, this foyer table has a collection of my nanny's religious chalk figures that I actually leave out all year, in some of her aqua glass. But this little round foyer table is kind of set up for weddings, and it's very feminine. Spring colors, spring flowers, my nanny's wedding portrait and mine behind it, and my feather tree that I decorate for every season is festooned with lots of birds and birds' nests and eggs and baskets and all things spring. It's topped with one of my nanny's sleeping dolls, the eyes close when it is laid back and she is dressed as a bride. I have a whole collection of those dolls that she had. Those of you that follow Pearls on Tuesday know I love to add a little hygge to every season with lots of candlelight and lamps in general. On my dining table, I've layered some vintage cloths, but my grandmother embroidered this one, and I love the blue and white. I'll keep that up throughout the spring. And on the buffet table, I have another embroidered scarf that my grandmother did, but I've tried to make a little vignette with some organic finds. I have a bird's nest that we found in the backyard a few years ago, some of my dried hydrangeas from a few years ago, and another little bird's nest that actually had real eggs in it that was actually behind the floral bouquet on my front door one year. I couldn't move it until the babies moved out. Heading into the kitchen from the dining room, this first vignette is a nod to Mother's Day. I have a vintage baby picture that has a dome frame, piece of glass, some of my vintage baby silver. That little baby shoe actually belonged to my aunt. An old baby book, my daughter's brush, this This is a dish, a baby dish with a nursery rhyme on it. Lots of little spoons and my husband's baby cup, a rattle, some baby buttons from many, many years ago. Those were my father's baby shoes. And they're all sitting on a crochet piece my grandmother did. And next to this candle, I almost always have one of my seasonal Lori Mitchell pieces. This one I put out for April, and it's a little ladybug. Some lemons and limes and baskets. Jelly beans left over from Easter. And on our little cafe table is probably my favorite piece of embroidery. Again, from my grandmother. They are iris, and I love purple, so I love the color. They have a crocheted edge on them. It's a little egg basket with some eggs. And now we'll be heading into the foyer area. On my grandfather clock, I have some little miniatures, a bunny, a cardinal, a duck, some little bears, a dachshund, and a set of cats, and a miniature painting that I did a few years ago of topiary in some chinoiserie, which is my thing. Into the den on the mantle, I've added some spring blooms to the two arrangements on the edges, and am displaying for spring our collection of Hummels. Some of these came from my husband's grandmother, some were gifts. This Virgin Mary in the middle was purchased when they lived in Germany, and my husband's grandmother gave it to us as a wedding gift. We treasure that, it was hers. And the last one over here, the little girl reading a book my parents gave me on my 21st birthday as I was about to graduate college in elementary education. I love this little basket of vintage kittens. They were mine when I was a child, and I love to put them out in the spring. On the coffee table, I have another crochet piece layered with the burlap covering. And in this little tray, I have some oyster shells that a friend and I covered with tissue paper and embellished. My little collection of Amish people that I bought in Lancaster, Pennsylvania several years ago. I love to visit Amish country and look at all the handiwork and crafts that they create. And over in the corner here is my dress form that I decorate each season. Right now it has a dress that my great-grandmother crocheted. I actually wore that dress. Another Sleepy Eye doll in a beautiful spring outfit. I think that's from about 1940 something. A baby bonnet that was my father's. And some daisies. I hope that you have enjoyed this little glimpse into some spring decor inside and out at my home. And if you did enjoy this video, please consider subscribing to Pearls on Tuesday.